5336 north by 6419 west. Churchill Falls. 7 million horsepower. 650 miles from St. John's, 700 miles from Montreal, 950 miles from Toronto, 1,000 miles from New York. Most of central Labrador is drained by the Churchill River. Every second, 50,000 cubic feet of water pour over Churchill Falls. The plateau above is strewn with swamps and lakes. Together they form a huge natural reservoir. From 25 miles away, the Indians saw a great cloud of mist. Pichitano, they called the falls. It steams, and they feared it. They feared its great cauldron of white water, believing it to be the home of Manitou, their most powerful god. In 1839 came John McLean of the Hudson's Bay Company, the first white man to see the falls. In his diary, McLean recorded his impressions.
After one day's rest, we embarked in a canoe sufficiently large to contain several conveniences to which I had been for some time a stranger. A tent to shelter us by night, and tea to cheer us by day. We fared too like princes on the produce of sea and land procured by the net and the gun. We thus proceeded gaily on our downward course without meeting any interruption or experiencing any difficulty in finding our way. When, one evening, the roar of a mighty cataract burst upon our ears, warning us that danger was at hand. We soon reached the spot, which presented to us one of the grandest spectacles in the world, but put an end to all hopes of success in our enterprise. The river precipitates itself over the rock which forms the fall, and still roaring and foaming, it continues its maddened course pent up between walls of rock.
55 years later, in 1894, A.P. Lowe of the Geological Survey of Canada led a party to Churchill Falls. Imaginative and perceptive, Lowe predicted to a Senate committee in Ottawa,
there are several millions of horsepower in the falls, and in addition to mechanical horsepower, it would also furnish the heat whereby, by an electrical process, the reduction of iron ores might be performed.
But this vast, unsentimental land discouraged all but the most adventurous. Even by 1928, at the time of the Taylor Rogers expedition, fewer than 50 white men had seen the falls. Such men, prospectors, scientists, and surveyors, were drawn by the challenge and promise of this unknown land. Men fought their way 300 miles inland from the coast up the sudden rise of more than 1,300 feet onto the Labrador Plateau. For long months, they battled the rapids, the cold, the heat, and the black flies. Game, while plentiful, was unreliable, and a man with sense packed supplies for the whole trip. Men had starved to death in this country. P. Lowe's report was not forgotten, but for more than half a century, the falls were left undeveloped, a promise and a challenge. Now something is being done. The Churchill Falls project. It will harness the Churchill to produce enough power for more than 3 metropolitan cities. The Churchill Falls Corporation is making the dream of Newfoundland's Premier Joseph Smallwood come alive. A mammoth hydroelectric development. For Smallwood was one of the prophets with the vision of a new Labrador. The feasibility of developing Labrador power was proved by the nearby Twin Falls power plant. Since 1962, it has supplied power for iron ore mining and now for the Churchill Falls project. Since 1900, the demand for electricity has been skyrocketing in a dizzy geometrical progression. By now, most North American power sources have been developed. One of the last great sites left is Churchill Falls, and this power is sold right up to the year 2012. Hydro-Quebec agreed in 1966 to buy all the power surplus to the requirements of Newfoundland. The first thing the project had to overcome was distance. A 120-mile all-weather truck road was built from the site to meet the railway at mile 286. Distance also caused a transmission problem, for until recently, power couldn't be sent over such long distance economically. But there's been a quiet revolution in transmission technology. Engineers have been using higher and higher voltages to push great blocks of power over increasing distances. 220 kilovolts in the 20s, 345 kilovolts in the 50s, 500 kilovolts in the early 60s, and now 735 kilovolts. There was no great discovery, just a steady improvement in high voltage equipment, in circuit breakers, lightning arresters, and insulators. And improvements in the line itself. In the air around a transmission line, there's always a field of electrical pressure. If the voltage is extremely high, this field is strong enough to move stray electrons so they knock more electrons off the surrounding molecules of air, starting little avalanches of electricity, the corona effect. A significant amount of power is wasted. But if the line were enlarged, the field strength would be weakened and corona would decrease. Of course, stringing such a big conductor across the country would be next to impossible. However, the same effect can be achieved by splitting the line into several conductors. The electric field remains weakened and corona loss is insignificant. In 1962, Hydro-Quebec took the lead in EHV, extra high voltage transmission. Hydro-Quebec had to move an enormous block of power from Manicouagan in Quebec's hinterland more than 300 miles to Montreal. The engineers took the big step and went to 735 kilovolts. 735 kV meant every element in the system had to be specially designed to handle the tremendous electrical pressure. Engineers were consulted in the United States, Sweden, and France, and the most sophisticated hardware and switchyard equipment was developed. Hydro-Quebec built the first 735 kilovolt line in the world. Now, with several years of operation behind it, it has a proven record of performance and reliability. Power from the Northeast for the growing demands of Montreal. "30 inches of rain falls here each year. 20% of the Labrador Plateau is covered with water. 21,700 square miles are drained by the Churchill River. The amount of water power that can be developed depends not only on the volume of water, but also on how far it falls. The Churchill River descends 215 feet through the rapids above the falls and plunges 245 feet over the falls itself. From the foot of the falls to a point 16 miles downstream, the river drops another 580 feet. By placing the power plant here and diverting the water on the plateau above, a head of 1,040 feet can be obtained. To take advantage of this massive head, the channel scheme was devised. The Churchill River will be diverted into the string of lakes along the plateau edge by a dam and dikes on Jacoby Lake. Other dams and dikes will form the forebay. A control dam and dikes on Lobstick and Sandgirt Lakes will provide the main storage. Dams will raise the level of Michicamo Lake, and a channel will divert the flow into Sandgirt. Other lakes will also be diverted into the system. In all, a reservoir of 2,351 square miles will catch the flow from a drainage area that is 1/4 of all Labrador. Exhaustive field investigations and engineering evaluations have proved the Churchill Falls project is feasible and economic. Designs for the giant turbines are being tested. Hydraulic models show the pattern of water current through the turbine's runner. Tests are being conducted for the mile-long tail race tunnels and the surge chamber. More and more men are arriving daily to work on the project, and more equipment. Modern trailer units have been set up to give the men the conveniences of home. There's a recreation center and a temporary school, and plans for a permanent town with church, school, playground, curling rink, and shopping center. The men will blast more than 2.5 million cubic yards of rock for the powerhouse. They're here to move rivers and form lakes to feed the power plant. The intake pipes in the forebay are under construction. In this rain-drenched land, construction never stops. The great earth-moving machines plow on through all kinds of weather. earth is being cleared from the cliff face, where tunnels blasted out of the solid rock will bring the water from the powerhouse out to the old riverbed. Millions of tons of earth, rock, and stone must be moved. In a setting from another world, men are forging a project of the future. And this is what they will build. The largest single hydroelectric development ever undertaken in the Western world. 1,100 feet underground is the powerhouse. Leading down to it are the penstocks, which release water under great pressure, driving 11 massive generators. That pressure is converted into rotation by the turbines. Each can develop almost 650,000 horsepower. The water from the penstock drives the turbine's runner at 200 revolutions per minute. And this turns the generator's 600-ton rotor, producing more than 450,000 kilowatts. Together, the 11 generators produce more than 5 million kilowatts, a staggering 7 million horsepower. This power is sent on 735 kilovolt lines to tie into the Hydro-Quebec power grid. And the source of all this power? Water. Every cloudburst, every snowflake, every lake, every drop gathers and becomes one of the greatest forces in nature. Canada's resources have always been geared to vast, imaginative projects, and the challenge of harnessing the power of the Churchill is an international venture that ranks with the greatest in man's ever-expanding search for energy.